Following visits to Croft, Brands Hatch and Alton Park, round 6 of the Dunlop Endurance Championship took the teams to the Silverstone International circuit. The VR Motorsport pairing of Danny Harrison and Jem Hepworth had taken 3 outright wins so far, but had recorded their first DNF in the previous round at Alton. However, they bounced back by taking a convincing pole position here in their Praga R1T. Joining them on the front row, the McG Racing Taranis of Johnny McGregor and Ben Sharridge, class winners in the opening race of the season at Croft. Third quickest, another VR Motorsport Praga, this one driven by Jack Fabi and Gary Townsend, who had claimed their first outright victory last time out. And they would be joined on Road 2 by the Raw Motorsports Radical of Ben Dimmock and Steve Burgess, 2-time Class 2 winners this season, including an outright victory at Croft. Fifth quickest in qualifying was the Moss Motorsport BMW, multiple Britcar production champion Mike Moss, joined by reigning Dunlop Endurance champion Andy Schultz for the first time. His championship-winning teammate from last year, Paul Bailey, and 2018 champion Ross Wiley shared the SB Race Engineering Ferrari 488, which completed the top 6. The first 60-minute race of the weekend got underway with Jem Hepworth leading the pack into the rolling start aboard the Praga R1T, with Ben Sharridge alongside in the yellow McG Racing Taranis. But there was instant drama, a screech of tyres and a trail of burning rubber as Hepworth spun from the lead, several drivers having to take evasive action. Mark Cunningham emerged at Village Corner as the leader, his SG Racing Porsche just ahead of Mike Moss's BMW and Jack Fabi's Praga. Then another incident as Matthew Sanders was pitched into a spin by Marcus Vivian. The Amspeed Zoic BMW and the Reflex Racing Ligier locked together. Meanwhile, Hepworth had just about managed to get the 85 Praga out of the gravel trap at Abbey, but she dropped from first to last. Back at Village, Vivian managed to untangle the front of his Ligier from the side of the BMW and was eventually able to continue on his way. This replay from aboard the VW Golf of Tim Docker, showing the moment it all went wrong. At the end of lap 1, there was a brave move from Martin Byford, sending the EDF Motorsport Seat around the outside of Will Powell's Ginetta to go second in Class 4. Byford even managed to squeeze past the Taranis into club. With Sharridge having to get off the throttle, Powell got the better exit and the Motus 1 Ginetta was back up to 9th. Up ahead, it was nose to tail for the lead between Cunningham and Moss, while Class 4 leader Tom Bradshaw had put the CRH BMW ahead of Fabi for third. A terrific start from 8th on the grid. With more horsepower and a better run through Farm Curve, Moss then snatched the lead from the SG Racing Porsche. After being delayed by Hepworth's spin at the start, Ben Sharridge had dropped from 2nd to 11th, and things got worse as Nicole Drought went past in the Beluga Porsche, and then Tim Docker closed in, the reigning Class 4 champion outbraking the Taranis into Village. Having started the race from the pit lane, rallying expert Sasha Kakad was already making some progress up the order in the Simpsons Audi RS3. After passing the Zest race car engineering Seat of Mark Jones and Robert Taylor, his next target was to catch the battle between Mark Albert's Aston Martin and the New Barn Racing Jaguar F-Type of Adam and Callum Thompson. Up at the sharp end, the Moss Motorsport BMW continued to lead the SG Racing Porsche, but with the VR Motorsport Praga of Jack Fabi now back up to third, having recovered the place from Tom Bradshaw's BMW. And the Alton Park race winner wasn't done yet. Carrying immense speed through Abbey and into Farm Curve, he was set to pounce at Village Corner. And pounce he did. The Praga now up to second, but with the Porsche still in the lead of Class 3. Running in 11th place overall, Tim Docker's Maximum Motorsport Golf was 4th in Class 4, but he now had company in the form of the Intu Racing Porsche Cayman, driven by former Renault Clio Cup frontrunner Ed Peed. Docker just about managing to fend him off through the link. Further back, Kakad had now split the Aston and the Jaguar, the Audi up to 17th place and 8th in Class 4. But they were all being reeled in by the Praga of Jem Hepworth, determined to make up for her first corner spin. Back on board with Tim Docker on the run into Stowe Corner, and a terrific move around the outside from Ed Peed to put the Cayman up to 4th in Class 4. And it was still tight in the battle for the outright lead, as Mike Moss was coming under all sorts of pressure from Jack Fabi. The two Class 1 cars glued together as they ran through Abbey Corner. Fabi using all of the downforce from the Praga to slingshot through Farm Curve and pull off another excellent move into Village. Another key battle was for second in Class 4. Having lost the position to Martin Byford at the end of lap 1, Will Powell was now the quicker of the two and had reeled in the EDF Seat. Then Byford ran wide into Abbey and Powell didn't require a second invitation. The Motor1 Racing Ginetta now ahead. After his gutsy move at Stowe, Ed Peed had also moved ahead of the Veluga Porsche to put the Intu Racing Cayman third in Class 4. The VW of Tim Docker fifth in class and 12th overall, but being caught by the Class 1 Taranis of Ben Sharridge, beginning to find some grip and some rhythm after a difficult start to the race. Also going well now, the number 9 PB Racing Porsche of Peter Urseg, up from 18th on the grid. Meanwhile, Hepworth continued her recovery, passing Kakad to climb up to 17th. Flat out down the Hanger Straight with Tim Docker, but the touring car was no match for the Taranis in a straight line. Neither was the Veluga Porsche, Ben Sharridge recovering 2 positions. By lap 6, Jack Fabi had stretched his lead to 6 seconds, while Mike Moss was now busy fending off Class 2 leader Steve Burgess in the Raw Motorsports Radical. Delayed by the first corner incident, Burgess had dropped from 4th on the grid down to 7th at one point, but he was now back into a podium position and about to climb one step further up the rostrum. Burgess threw the Radical around the outside of the BMW, a great move to go second. Also resurgent was Ben Sharridge, the Taranis overtaking the bespoke car's Porsche into Abbey to move back up to 9th place. They were followed by Drought, Docker and Urseg in 11th, 12th and 13th, battling for 4th in class. Docker was certainly pushing hard, locking up on the way into Village. Nevertheless, he got a good exit and started to close on the Porsche as they headed towards the link. Then, as they hit the brakes, Docker went for a move down the inside, but as the gap closed, he took to the curbs and there was contact. Drought and Docker both sent into a spin. Both drivers were quickly able to get going again, but not before the Praga of Jem Hepworth came screaming past. 2 more positions recovered for the pole sitter. As mid-distance approached, teams started to head into the pits for their mandatory stops. Second stint drivers poised and ready to join the race. First to come in had been the Ferrari of defending champions SB Race Engineering from 6th place, followed shortly thereafter by the 85 Praga of VR Motorsport, which Jem Hepworth had brought back up to 7th place before handing over to Danny Harrison. And Harrison was now right on the tail of Ross Wiley in the Ferrari. Also pitting the Veluga Porsche, though sadly for the second time after Nicole Drought had been forced to stop for checks following that collision with Tim Docker. And Johnny McGregor was about to take the wheel of his Taranis. The second place Radical of Steve Burgess was now 14 seconds behind race leader Jack Fabi, while the third place BMW of Mike Moss was 37 seconds adrift. 5 seconds behind him, Tom Bradshaw, an excellent 4th overall and still dominating Class 4. After their lap 1 crash, Reflex Racing would suffer a further delay due to the need to change the front left tyre on the Ligier, quite possibly as a result of that contact. But with XBTCC racer Luke Davenport climbing aboard, all was not lost. Amongst the last to pit were race leaders VR Motorsport, another outstanding drive from Jack Fabi. But would the lead he'd built up be enough, with some quick second stint drivers already out on track, including Danny Harrison in the sister Praga? In for their mandatory stop, local team Motor1 Racing. Will Powell bringing in the Ginetta G55 from a strong 8th place overall and 2nd in Class 4. Powell, a race winner for Brabham in the 2019 championship, would be handing over to the less experienced but rapidly improving Dave Scaramanga. With the pit stop phase complete, Danny Harrison emerged as the new race leader. The team's decision to pit early and some blistering lap times from Harrison paying off in spades. The erstwhile leading 84 Praga, now driven by Gary Townsend, was down to 2nd place and being hunted down by double Britcar champion Andy Schultz in the Moss Motorsport BMW. Ben Dimmock had now taken over the Raw Motorsports Radical, which had dropped to 4th but still led Class 2, while Ross Wiley was 5th overall in the Ferrari but closing fast, his lap times only bettered by the race leader. The black and red CRH BMW was 6th overall, with Jonathan Evans now at the wheel, and up to 7th place the Class 1 Taranis of Johnny McGregor. A stop-go penalty for the Ginetta of the Motor1 Racing team cost them the chance of challenging EDF Motorsport for 2nd in Class 4. And so Ash Woodman was left to enjoy a relatively stress-free run to the flag. And then the change for 2nd place that had been coming as Andy Schultz moved ahead of Gary Townsend into Stowe. Peter Cunningham had taken over the SG Racing Porsche from his son Mark, and the pair continued to lead Class 3, running in 7th place overall. Their closest rivals, Bespoke Cars, were 1 lap adrift, with the 991 of Dave Bennett and Marcus Fothergill, another Porsche to run inside the outright top 10. The closing laps offered up plenty of drama. First of all, some light rain made for testing driving conditions, and then the Class 4 leaders CRH had to pit for a splash and dash of fuel, with just 7 minutes left on the clock. This dropped Jonathan Evans and Tom Bradshaw down to 14th place overall and 7th in class, a huge disappointment following an excellent drive. This promoted the EDF Seat into the class lead, ahead of the Motus One Racing Ginetta, and despite a troubled race, the Reflex Racing Ligier recovered to 3rd in class, just pipping the Team Brit Aston Martin of Aaron Morgan and Bobby Trendley to the final spot on the class podium. Nevertheless, the pair, both newcomers to motorsport, continued to impress, 11th overall on their first race around the Silverstone International circuit. Meanwhile, the Raw Motorsports Radical moved up to 2nd place overall after passing Gary Townsend's Praga and then Andy Schultz's BMW after the latter had picked up a stop-go penalty for a pit stop infringement. Worse still for Moss Motorsport, Schultz dropped off the podium on the very last lap of the race when Ross Wiley passed him for 3rd in the SB Race Engineering Ferrari, the BMW losing time with overheating problems. But there were no such worries for Danny Harrison, who built up a huge 1-minute advantage to complete an incredible recovery drive. Stone last after the first corner, Danny Harrison and Jem Hepworth picked up their 4th win of the season after an action-packed race at Silverstone. Raw Motorsports took their 3rd class win of the season to finish 2nd overall, with SB Race Engineering completing the podium. The Moss Motorsport BMW limped home to finish 4th, but worryingly pulled off the circuit straight after the checkered flag. While the VR Motorsport Praga of Fabian Townsend was 5th, and the Mac G Racing Tiranis came home 6th. EDF Motorsport and Bespoke Cars Racing completing the top 8, winners of Class 4 and 3 respectively.
Bit tricky out there at first. I messed up the start, that was my own fault. Just took it way too heavy into the first corner, didn't get the tyres warmed up enough, but I learned from that, and you know that happens in racing. But we brought it back in first, I went back to 22nd and brought it to 7th, so we both did an amazing job of the car, and mechanics did an awesome job. Very happy, very happy.
It was not an easy win, to say the least, but yeah, we one by one between us both, we made our way back to the top step and made a bit of a gap to keep us nice and safe for when the rain come. So it was a good race.
The start was quite frantic with the Praga spinning, so I'd take some avoiding action on the exit road and fight my way back through the grid to 2nd place. And then towards the end of my stint, we had a problem with the engine cutting out, so I had to recycle the master. We lost about 30 seconds there before I pitted.
Yeah, great race actually. Yeah, very enjoyable. It was nice to be catching the leading pack and going from 4th up to P2. We finished overall and P1 in class. So yeah, great result.
Following success in the opening round at Croft, EDF Motorsports picked up their 2nd Class 4 victory of the campaign.
The team prepped the car very, very well, and yeah, it came right for us in the end. We had a very good stop. The car was very consistent the whole race. I think we've pretty much maximised what we can get out of the car at the moment. To come away with a class win is very, very rewarding, yeah.
In our next report, you can catch highlights from race 2 here at Silverstone, round 7 of the Dunlop Endurance Championship.